Put up or shut up time for Hugh Freeze and Auburn football? Josh Pate thinks so, but so does Chris Phillips. Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the Rapport. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for giving us a listen this afternoon. Joining me, as he does every single week, is my good friend from SEC Unfiltered, Chris Phillips. Chris, before we get into some Auburn football, man, how are things going? You guys got a live show going, and you're always on the road.
Mike, what's going on, man? I appreciate you having me. Yeah, it's that time of year where it's exciting, right? You've got baseball and basketball kind of crossing over, so tons of games going on. Spring football is in the air. It'll be here before you know it. And so content bleeding out of the eyeballs, as we like to say, Mike. And, yeah, the travels have begun. I'll actually be on the road the next 3 weekends consecutively for baseball specifically, and we're going to mix in some basketball in there as well. So love getting on the road, interacting with all the great fans, and just hanging out with everybody. And always love hanging out with you, man, every single week. It's always a blast.
Oh, look, you know what I love talking about is college football, and it's only February, but we're about to turn our eyes to spring practice. You came on the show a couple weeks ago, Chris, and you said, look, man, I need to see something from Auburn football this year. My good friend Josh Pate has a take out there where he said it's not unreasonable to expect Auburn to be a fringe playoff contender this year. Obviously, they got to accomplish some things this spring if that's going to happen. But, you know, in your mind, what does Auburn need to do this spring to take steps towards being a college football playoff contender in 2025?
Yeah, Mike, I think first things first. I think that is a realistic expectation and realistic goal. And again, I know you and I have talked off air, on air, but, you know, at minimum getting to the month of November with a shot to get in the college football playoff, at least be in that conversation, right? When the playoff rankings are coming out, I think that's where Auburn should be, right? Because you think about when the rankings drop, it's about midway point of the season nearly. I think Auburn being in that combo will tell us all we need to know about, did Auburn have the kind of year that we expect them to have, they need to have, and they honestly should have with the talent of the roster. I mean, I think the first goal of spring ball, not to sound like a coach here, Mike, get through it healthy. That's the number one thing.
Don't get hurt.
Don't get hurt. That's the number one thing. But obviously, when you've got new pieces on the offensive side, starting at the quarterback position, I mean, I think the spring's going to be about Jackson Arnold. I do. I mean, I think, you know, with his skill set, figuring out what his strengths are, what his weaknesses, and can Hugh Freeze and his coaching staff play to him. So I think that's your top priority. Obviously, the more reps and everything and the more practice looks you can get for a guy like Jackson Arnold, just getting him comfortable in the system to a point where you come back in the fall. And obviously, he's going to rep through this in the summer with his guys, but come back in the fall, and you're going to have to hit the ground running immediately, Mike. Obviously, you've got that big game opening the season at Baylor. I know from the national perspective that may not move the needle as some others out there like a LSU, Clemson, or certainly a Texas, Ohio State. But you talk about the importance of this one and how big it is at Baylor for Auburn to get off on the right foot, a game you should win. But, hey, Auburn should have beaten Cal last year, too, and it didn't go that way. So you've got to make sure, you know, I know for a lot of teams, week one, there's a lot of loose ends. You're playing, I forget who it was Auburn played in week one last year, but it was just a straight-up butt whooping, and it didn't really tell us anything. Now you're going to come out, and there's at least going to be an opponent that has got a pulse on the side. You got to be ready to go. So I look at the quarterback position specifically. Also, I think, too, the skill positions, who's going to step up at running back and fill in the void that Jarquez Hunter is leaving. But for me, it's all quarterback. I think anytime you got a new signal caller, Mike, getting him accustomed and getting him comfortable with everything, that should be the top priority, I think, in spring.
Yeah, you know, for me, I think you'll be all right at running back. The receiver room should be super dynamic. Cam Coleman might be he might be a top 5 best returning receiver in all of college football next year. That's how talented that kid is. Just
yeah, it's one of the best rooms in college football, not just the SEC. I think, Mike, it has the potential to be, right. They just got to have a guy get him football, but the talent is second to none, I think.
Yeah, the talent is there. The opportunity is there. The schedule sets up nice if you're Auburn. You've just got to go out and win football games. And I think for Auburn, that comes back to what you said, quarterback. Now, Auburn is in the unique position where it's just going to be pretty much Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight this spring. Ashton Daniels doesn't get there until summer. And so You don't even have to pretend like you got some kind of 4-horse race here at quarterback. Jackson Arnold is your starter, Chris. Period. Right? Jackson Arnold is your starter. And how quickly can you get Deuce Knight up to speed? Is Auburn maybe in a situation similar to what Florida was with the experienced Graham Mertz coming back, but then ended up turning to the freshman DJ Lagway at some point during the season?
I think that's a good point, Mike, you bring up, because, again, Deuce Knight is not your typical freshman, right, where it's like we're just going to immediately throw the red shirt tag on this kid. You think about the upside, the talent he has. I think he can help Auburn football win games right now, right? So that's something that excites you, but also what is that dynamic, right? Because I think Jackson Arnold can very well do the same, and I would even argue that his ceiling was probably higher than that of Graham Mertz from the standpoint of just the overall skill set. I'm not saying Jackson Arnold right now is a better quarterback than Graham Mertz was, what have you. And obviously you don't hope for your starter to go down with injury and force a freshman in there. It worked out for Florida. It can backfire, though, when you're asking a youngster to be that guy and be QB1. But, is there any sort of 2-quarterback system? Again, I don't know that you bring in Jackson Arnold from the portal to have a 2-quarterback system. The other thing, Mike, I was thinking about that, and I think this is something that's probably already started, but, we saw an Auburn team last year that just found ways to lose games, right, at the end of games. Just found ways to lose. Created ways, it felt like at times, to lose. And people talk about culture and a winning culture and that belief, finding ways to win. It starts now. Like that stuff is built in now. And so I think, as, again, cliche and coach speak as that may be, this is an important spring for Auburn in regards to, like, relearning how to win. And relearning how to clutch up in the games and believing that good things are going to happen. And I think obviously having some different guys in there, maybe some different guys in your leadership positions can help you out in that front. But it starts even before spring ball, but certainly it starts in spring ball. You don't show up in week 1 and just say, okay, well, we're going to hope instinct kicks in at the end of games and we know how to win. That type of stuff starts now, finishing each rep, finish the drill. I know there's all these different cliches and slogans, but they exist for a reason. I think that type of stuff is really important too, Mike, when it comes to spring ball. And again, having some different guys in there should help, but instilling that, it's up to Hugh Freeze and his coaching staff to instill that and start that belief now. So when you get to kick off, we're not seeing Auburn blow games like they did all throughout the 2024 campaign.
Yeah, the ends of games were certainly super frustrating, I think, for everybody to watch, because you had enough talent to pull off 7, 8, maybe even 9 wins if the ball bounced your way. But that old adage about it feels like the harder I work, the luckier I get. Mm-hmm. If you're Auburn, I'm not saying they didn't work hard, but certainly being in a position, I think, Chris, for luck to find you is really important. Mm-hmm. And, when it seems like, when you're watching the Alabamas and the Ohio States, during the regular season, if it ever feels like, as a fan or just an interested observer, that their victory is inevitable, I think that's why they're constantly in a position for victory to find them, to choose them in those moments. And if you're Hugh Freeze, you've got to put Auburn in a position for victory to choose you at the end of the games. That's it. I don't think he did that. And I think that comes back to coaching.
Yeah, and one of my favorite slogans, Mike, on that same note is, luck is just when preparation meets opportunity.
There you go.
That's all it is. So, again, we can pull out all the cliches. A lack to prepare is a surefire way to not win. I mean, it goes without saying. So that work starts now. It even starts, heck, before spring ball, right? It starts in off-season workouts and, recruiting the right guys. I mean, it starts way early in the process. But that was certainly something. I mean, you have to look at and identify that that just haunted Auburn the entire 2024 season. And you look at the 2025 season, Mike, I mean, the opportunity is going to be there because you open up Baylor, Ball State, South Alabama. I think your SEC slate is pretty darn manageable.
Yeah.
At OU, at A&M, bye. You got the big one against Georgia. How tough that is. Mizzou is at home. You go to Arkansas. What are they going to be? And then your month in November, Mike, Kentucky, Vandy, Mercer, and then Bama. I mean, this schedule, we were all talking about last year how manageable the schedule was. This, to me, is even more manageable.
They got lucky
really,
again.
truly.
Yeah.
They got lucky again. So you have to take advantage because, Mike, as well as I do, like, you're not going to get this schedule every year, right? You're not going to get it. So, Yeah, the opportunity is going to be there. Like I mentioned, if we're talking about them middle October, late October, certainly going to November, and they're in that playoff conversation, I think we'll know Auburn had the type of year everybody wanted because the opportunity is going to be there. And but if we're seeing late game collapses again, at some point, you know something's got to change.
Yeah, I think that change will be a new head coach, which will be
Right.
unfortunate if you think about all the head coaches Auburn will have had since 2020. It's only
Mm.
2025. But look, Saban retired famously before this season started, and I think we saw a little bit of a changing of the guard in the SEC. Now, there's an opening, I think, for teams like LSU or Auburn or Ole Miss to step into that. But who are the top 3 teams in the SEC? We're going to talk about that right after a quick word from our friends at the Rogue Shop. If you are watching Auburn versus Florida on Saturday and you were stressed out, and rightfully so, should have visited our friends at the Rogue Shop and use code Rapport to get 15% off that Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, and especially anxiety watching Auburn sports. The Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Our guy Richard, longtime sponsor of the War Report, puts a little note in there for everybody using code Rapport. We appreciate him for sponsoring this segment. This segment is brought to you by our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR and use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Spring is coming, and I got my dad the Kamado grill, Chris, for Father's Day, and we have done nothing but make memories around that thing since he's got it. Golden's Cast Iron serving up lifetime products, family products that help you create that next family memory. Again, goldenscastiron.com/WR so they know the War Report sent you. Jumping back in here. Look, there's an opening. Somebody's got to take the reins. Somebody's got to be the best in the conference, Chris. Who are your top 3 teams in the SEC headed into next season? I think for me, it's Texas. And then it's wide open after that. Because I'm not sure Alabama's it. I'm not sure Kalen DeBoer's Alabama is solidly in the top 3 anymore. Until I see what he does now that roster has turned over even more. It's going to be even more of his. But my number 1 is Texas. Who do you got at number 1?
Yeah, Mike, and I think to your Alabama point, I think that there's a difference between what I think they are going into the season and what I think they possibly could be at the end. So right now, for me, number 1, I would also go Texas. I think what's so fascinating is so many of these top teams we've talked before, Mike, that are breaking in new quarterbacks. I mean, as good as we think Arch Manning is going to be, it's still going to be different, right? This is the first time he's truly QB1. But we saw him on the field, take reps, and I feel really confident with what Arch is going to be. He's got all the pedigree. He's got the arm talent.
Yeah.
He can run the football. That's going to be the big question is, Sark doesn't typically like mobile quarterbacks, dual threat guys. Well, now he's got one, and he has to use his running ability. And I think we saw that obviously with, the Texas A&M game and some other times, some of those goal line packages. So I feel like it'll be a seamless transition. And I think, many thought that Arch was the better quarterback last year. So I think it could be an upgrade under center. So I would also go Texas number 1. I think the juggernaut they've built there. And let's be honest, too, Mike, the schedule, again, is not going to be
sets up
one
nice.
of the toughest in the conference. I think you have to go back into this season with some of the other questions that some other teams have out there, put Texas in that 1 spot.
Yeah, my number 2 is Georgia. Sans, Carson, Beck. I think they're going to be looking for answers at quarterback headed into the season. I'll be interested to see if the heir apparent Gunnar Stockton stays in that spot. But you still got 1 million 5-stars all over that program. Obviously, they're recruiting with the best of them. Kirby Smart has proven to be one of the best coaches in college football, if not the best at the moment. Now, I know Ohio State took home the ship this year, but I would not say Ryan Day is the best coach in the country. I still think Kirby Smart holds that crown. But because of how solid you mentioned Texas is at quarterback with Arch Manning stepping in, so I'm giving them the edge over Georgia. Here, I think Georgia has questions to answer. And they'll probably answer them. They'll probably answer them, Chris. But for right now, Georgia's my number 2.
Yeah, Mike, I think you're a smart man because I've also got Georgia at number 2. I like Gunnar Stockton's game. He wasn't the reason they lost to Notre Dame. We think back to that game, the special teams blunders and some other mistakes Georgia made. They lose a lot on defense, which I think will be really, really interesting. But, some of it is, number one, from the personnel standpoint going into 2025. Number two, Mike, is they deserve the benefit of the doubt. Georgia's going to reload, like you mentioned, the way that they recruit. Hey, you talk about a team that revamped their wide receiver room. There's going to be no shortage of weapons on the outside in Athens. So they've got questions like everyone else to answer, but their answers come in the form of five-star talent, and I'll take that. And Kirby Smart, and I'll take that every single time. So I got the Dogs number 2 also.
Oh, and much debated number 3. I feel like there's a bunch of teams we could plug in.
3 is where it gets really tricky.
Yeah. Is it Tennessee? Is it LSU? Is it Ole Miss? I got LSU in my 3rd spot. I went back and forth over this. Look, conventional wisdom might suggest that it's probably Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. But they should have made the playoffs this year. And if you ask me, there's no excuse for Ole Miss not making this playoff. Them, Missouri, they fumbled the bag. Ole Miss and Missouri fumbled the bag, Chris. And
I believe choke artist was the word you used.
Yes.
Choke artist.
Yes, if you are the number 3 team in the SEC, you make the playoffs and you embarrassed us as a conference. I'm tired of Lane. He needs to stay in his lane, wherever that is. So,
Mike, you got the LSU Tigers. Are you going Ole Miss?
Tigers, yeah.
LSU Tigers. I'm going to go LSU also, but I tell you, I am bullish on Alabama going into the season.
Okay.
And I think at season's end, gun to head, I would say Bama is going to be in that 3 spot. Because you look at what they've got coming back, there's no excuse, Mike, for this team not to make the college football playoff.
Okay.
And I know that Auburn end of season will have something to say about that. They've got to go to Georgia. They'll have something to say about that. But when you look at returning experience, it all hinges on quarterback for me, Mike. If quarterback clicks for Bama, they're winning 10 or more games and they're going to the college football playoff. That to me, it's as simple as that for Bama. Again, when you look at returning experience, offensively, defensively, and I don't think Kalen DeBoer has just forgotten how to coach. He's got a lot to prove, don't get me wrong, but I do wonder how much of the frustration was tied up in year 1 to some things Jalen Milroe did not do or maybe even could not do. So is it going to be Ty Simpson? Is it going to be Austin Mack? Is it going to be Keelan Russell? I don't know. Right. But if they can get it to click at quarterback, I think it'll click for Bama, and I think they will be in the playoff.
Yeah, look, the talent should be there. I just think Kalen DeBoer is just not going to be as good as they thought.
But I'll go LSU right now, Mike. You're a smart man. I feel like it might be a little boring. We agree on all 3 of these, but I will go LSU right now too. The veteran quarterback and Garrett Nussmeier. In LSU, they recruit as well as anybody. They got as much talent as anybody. Huge season opener for them at Clemson. That's one of the most intriguing games in college football to kick it off. Man, if they lose another opener, the temperature on Brian Kelly is going to be turned up another notch.
He's got some off the field problems going on here too with former players and just praying for those guys down there in Baton Rouge. But look, that's our top 3. We've got Texas, Georgia, and LSU. Oddly enough, agreeing on all 3 of these. What we will agree on as well is that you'll be back next week to talk even more Auburn football as we inch closer to spring practice. Chris, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, Mike, appreciate you having me on. It's crazy, man. Spring ball will be here before you know it, and that brings a smile to our faces, I know. Again, we're at SEC Unfiltered, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, where we get your content on socials, YouTube, podcasts, and, of course, our website, secunfiltered.com. Mike, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
Guys, thank you so much for giving us a listen on the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. I'm signing off, and as always, worry.